Hey, everybody, and welcome. Today, we're diving into something that's pretty much universal, family relationships.
Yeah, everyone's got them.
Exactly. And navigating those relationships can get, well, kind of complicated, especially when you bring significant others into the mix.
Oh, yeah.
So, we asked you guys for your best tips on blending families, without accidentally triggering a full-blown family feud. And we've got a ton of great advice to unpack, so let's get right to it with our expert.
It's true. These situations, it's not always easy. I always say it's more of an art than a science. Finding that sweet spot between honoring your own family traditions and creating something totally new as a couple.
You're right, it's a real balancing act. And speaking of balancing acts, our first tip is deceptively simple. Communicate openly. Sounds easy enough, but how do we put that into practice when, family baggage is involved? It's not always so straightforward, right?
You hit the nail on the head. Communication is not just about talking. I mean, it's about really listening and trying to understand where your partner's coming from,
Yeah.
you know?
Like, what does that look like in real life?
Okay, so picture this. Your partner's family is all about those big, over-the-top holiday celebrations. And yours, you guys are more, let's say, low-key, like way more low-key.
I can relate.
Right. So instead of just thinking, whoa, this is way too much, take a second to dig a little deeper. Maybe there's a history there, Like maybe their grandparents were immigrants and holding on to those traditions was really important to them.
Or maybe holidays became this way of coping after they went through some tough times together. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Exactly. It becomes less about their way versus my way and more about understanding the why. It's like you were saying, that why changes everything. Right?
Totally. Understanding those underlying reasons can really shift your perspective. Okay, so we're communicating better, we're digging into the why. What's next?
Well, naturally, that leads right into our second tip, respect for differences.
And I think this goes beyond just accepting their family's way of doing things. It's about genuinely appreciating those differences.
Exactly. Instead of just biting your tongue, instead of saying something like, well, that's weird, why not try something like, tell me more about why your family does that? I mean, really try to be curious.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That genuine curiosity can totally change the whole dynamic for sure.
For sure.
Okay, so moving on, this next tip feels really important, but maybe a little tough to implement. Setting boundaries. Any advice on how couples can agree on what those boundaries should look like, without turning it into a battlefield?
Yeah, that's a big one. The key here, I think, is to remember it's about finding that compromise.
And compromise that works for everyone, right?
Absolutely. That's where that open communication thing comes back into play big time. Like maybe one person's family is used to just popping in unannounced,
Oh, I know those types.
right? But the other person, they really value their planned downtime. They need a heads up. So instead of letting resentment simmer, a simple, hey, we love seeing you, but can we maybe try to schedule a time in advance that works for everyone?
I love that. It's direct, but it's also super compassionate.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to the more fun stuff, the really exciting part. Finding common ground. I see this as a chance to get creative, to blend traditions, and really build something new and special together as a couple.
Absolutely. It can be something as simple as like each of you bringing a dish from your family's Thanksgiving dinner
Mm.
to the table. Or, hey, maybe you start your own brand new traditions together.
Yeah, like start from scratch. I like that.
Remember that couple we were talking about earlier, the ones with like totally opposite holiday styles? Imagine if they decided to host like a casual brunch on Christmas morning and then later on they have a big fancy dinner on Christmas Eve. It's the best of both worlds.
That's such a great idea. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we have to talk about the big P, patience.
Ugh. Yes, patience. This blending families thing, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Remember that. It's going to take time and effort and understanding and a whole lot of grace. And by grace, I mean being kind and patient with your partner, with their family, and honestly with yourself too.
So true. You've given us so much to think about. Seriously, this has been eye-opening. It really is a journey, not a destination.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Hmm.
And hey, before I forget, remember, it's okay to ask for help along the way. Sometimes bringing in a neutral third party, like a therapist, can make all the difference. They can offer a fresh perspective and, give you the tools you need to navigate those tougher conversations. It's not a sign of weakness or anything.
It takes strength to ask for help when you need it, that's for sure.
That's right.
Okay, listeners, as you dive into your own family dynamics this week, here's something we want you to ponder. Think about a time when your partner's family traditions clashed with yours. How could you have approached that situation differently? With maybe a little bit more curiosity, a little more understanding. It's something to think about. All right, until next time, keep diving.